commentary, entertainment, sports, news, and opinion now. Here is Steve Malzberg.
Secretary Kerry has long experience in foreign policy, and he understands that words matter. Apartheid is inextricably associated with one of the worst examples of state-sponsored discrimination in history. The apartheid system in South Africa that was ultimately brought down by the heroic resistance of Nelson Mandela inside the country, supported by a concerted campaign of diplomatic and economic sanctions by the international community. There is no place for this word in the context of the State of Israel.
All right, folks, couldn't have said it better myself. And joining us now is Caroline Glick, senior contributing editor to the Jerusalem Post, director of the Israeli Security Project at the David Horowitz Freedom Center. And her new book, which has been out now for about a month or so, I believe, is The Israeli Solution, a One-State Plan for Peace in the Middle East. Yeah, a little over a month. I guess it was released the beginning of March, right, Caroline Glick?
That's right, Steve Malzberg. Thanks for having me on your show.
Are you kidding? You know, when things like this happen, you're one of the first people I think of, because you're such a like-minded supporter of the State of Israel, and we think alike on these issues. And when I heard Kerry, I mean, to me, it was just a culmination of threatening Israel with another intifada, threatening Israel with isolation, and threatening Israel with boycott, and now saying that they're going to become an apartheid state. It's just it just is a continuation.
It is a continuation of really a constant drumbeat of anti-Semitic rhetoric coming out of the mouth of the Secretary of State. It's true. Just, you know, a few months ago he said that Israelis are not interested in peace because we're too economically prosperous. You know, the old anti-Semitic trope about Jews and money.
I didn't hear that one. That's good.
Oh yes,
to know. Yeah.
He said it on two separate occasions, that Israel it's our economic prosperity is blinding us to how important it is for us to make peace. And then, and then he said another time, he said that we're too strong. Says, we're all powerful, right? And so we don't feel like doing it. So, and now, we're morally depraved, right? We're evil. We have latent evil within us, which means that if his two-state formula doesn't work, then we're necessarily going to become these subjugators of Arabs, which no Israeli leader and no potential Israeli leader harbors any such views or intentions. So, the only quibble that I have with what Senator Cruz said is that there is a context in which apartheid is a reasonable subject to be discussing regarding Israel, and that is the fact that every Arab state around Israel is an apartheid state.
I was going to say that, yep.
And the Palestinian state that John Kerry thinks Israel can't survive without is an apartheid state that he wishes to build, that is based not on the subjugation of Jews, but the annihilation of the Jewish presence in the areas that the Palestinians claim that they seek to control.
It is amazing, and it's so hypocritical and so bizarre that it makes your head spin. And John Kerry, backing down to an extent where he said that, if I could turn back time, and his spokesperson at the State Department, her best excuse when questioned over and over by the representative from the Associated Press, and we played this earlier, her best excuse was, well, he didn't say is. Right. I mean, I can't even fathom that kind of an answer from a spokesperson for the State Department.
Well, again, it's really important to understand what apartheid is under international law. Apartheid isn't simply, a racialist regime, which of course Israel is not. It's the only country in the Middle East where Arabs have full and equal rights as citizens. So the whole thing is just obscene. But it's not even the question of a racialist regime. It's a question, or a racist regime. It's a question of malign intent. So if he says that Israel will become an apartheid state, what he is saying is that Israelis are inherently evil, and that when we are placed in a situation where we have to make a decision, we are going to decide on the side of evil. That is what he says when he says Israel will become an apartheid state.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. That's a great interpretation. It's the only interpretation of it that I see. You know, Andy McCarthy wrote a piece today National Review, I believe it was posted, and he said that this is merely an extension of Barack Obama, which I've always thought in the first place. Not to say Kerry doesn't believe it, but everybody Obama puts in there, I think he sees as an extension of himself. A man who hung around with Rashid Khalidi, with Bill Ayers who petitioned, to the fact that he said Israel was an apartheid state in 2010. We know the history of Rashid Khalidi and his views. So do you see this as just a simple extension of Obama's beliefs?
I think that that's an absolutely reasonable assessment, because I think that every single person that Obama has appointed to senior policy positions in his administration and his foreign policy team share his hostile view of Israel. Absolutely.
All right. So what does this mean? What are the implications? I mean, what's been the reaction from the Israeli government? I mean, officially and behind the scenes, do you think? How ticked off are the people that matter?
Well, Israelis in general are extremely appalled by this. I mean, the news broke on Yom HaShoah, on Holocaust Remembrance Day, so that you had side-by-side headlines of memorials to the 6 million Jews who were murdered, and then the U.S. Secretary of State claiming that Jews are evil. So, I mean, I think that the message wasn't lost on very many people in Israel, and it certainly wasn't lost on the government. And I think that it increases the lack of trust between the Israelis, of the Israelis for the U.S. government. And I think it's critical moving forward for Congress to step in, because one of the most telling aspects of what Kerry said in those remarks to the Trilateral Commission is that once again he said that if Israel doesn't cave to PLO demands, that the Palestinian security forces are going to turn their guns on Israel. And we have to understand that these security forces, that Kerry doesn't seem to have a problem with them shooting at Jews, are being trained by the U.S. military, and they are being funded to the tune of $500 million a year by U.S. taxpayers. And I think Congress right now, as a consequence of what Kerry said, and his allowance that these people are going to turn their guns on Israel, and that those guns are being trained to shoot by U.S. trainers from the U.S. military, the United States has to end the military assistance program to the Palestinian Authority forthwith. And all of those trainers have to be redeployed out of the region. That mission has to come to an end immediately.
Yeah, we're talking to Caroline Glick here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Her book is The Israeli Solution, a one-state plan for peace in the Middle East. I'm reading a report here from the Times of Israel that says that the Obama administration had given Israel a specific commitment on two occasions, both during Obama's first term and again since his election to the second term, that they would back Israel's refusal to negotiate with the Palestinian government if Hamas is included in that government. Do you, Kerry's remarks and the remarks since Israel has pulled out seem to be a little inconsistent with any specific commitment from the administration.
That's right. I mean, I think that the administration has no credibility whatsoever. Its pledges, whether in regard to the Palestinians or regard to Iran, have no credibility. And I think that what we saw actually in President Obama's trip to Asia this week is that under his failed leadership, America has lost credibility with its allies all over the world. I mean, what was he doing in Japan and in Philippines and in Malaysia and in all of these places that he visited? He was trying to convince them that they could believe him when he says that he has their back, when all indications are to the contrary. And just a couple of weeks ago, he went on a trip to Saudi Arabia where he tried to make the same claims, and the Saudis certainly didn't believe him. So, what's happening between the United States and Israel is actually part of a larger problem for the United States. And that's why congressional action, particularly with regards to what has become an openly anti-Semitic policy by this administration, which ascribes malign intentions to Jews while ignoring the declaredly malign intentions of Israel's enemies, has to end. Congress has to step in and say, we've had enough. We are not going to use U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund a Palestinian terrorist authority and their military, certainly not when we're cutting back on U.S. military forces. So, I mean, I think that this is a time for Congress, for the grown-ups to come in and start restraining the administration, because their actions are being seen by people all over the world. When the Secretary of State says that sort of thing about the United States' most important ally in the Middle East, people all over the world hear it, and they say, if this is how the United States is treating Israel, of all places, how can we trust them?
Absolutely. Caroline, great to talk to you, and I hope you reach as many Congress people as possible. I know I'm going to start asking that question because I think it's a brilliant point. Thank you very much for your time, as always.
Thank you so much for having me on your program, and thanks to all of your viewers and listeners.
My pleasure. Caroline Glick. Check her out at carolineglick.com, ladies and gentlemen, and the book, The Israeli Solution, A One-State Plan for Peace in the Middle East. When we come back, give me 5 right here on the Steve Malzberg Show on Newsmax Television.